On August 23, 1931, a former U.S. Navy submarine floated next to an ice cap in the Arctic Ocean, some 600 miles from the North Pole. After completing an arduous 5,000-mile journey across the North Atlantic, the submarine and her crew were poised to make an epic voyage under the polar ice pack. The submarine was the Nautilus, a converted U.S. Navy submarine whose epic journey across the globe marked the end of one era of polar exploration and the dawn of a new one. Hello and welcome to Anything History. The story of the Nautilus is fascinating. It takes place in such a unique point in time, between the world wars, at the end of the age of exploration, when advances in submarines, led by the First World War, made the idea of reaching the North Pole from under the ice cap a possibility. The Nautilus started life out as the USS O-12, an O-class submarine that was launched in 1918. The O-class submarines were 172 feet long and had a diving depth of 200 feet. These diesel-electric submarines had a crew of 29 and could make 14 knots on the surface. They were the primary submarines for the United States Navy during World War I and even used as training boats up until the end of World War II. The O-12 was removed from the Navy's register on July 29, 1930. It was then transferred to the United States Bureau of Shipping for modification at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The Australian polar explorer, Sir Hubert Wilkins, wanted to use a fully equipped submarine as a laboratory to study the Arctic Ocean. Wilkins secured supplies and a submarine for his expedition using his own money and additional financing from newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst. For his investment, Hearst received exclusive media rights to the expedition. Interestingly, the O-12 was leased to the Lake and Danhauer Company of Bridgeport, Connecticut, for $1 per year for use on the Wilkins Arctic Geophysical Expedition. On March 24, 1931, the O-12 was rechristened the Nautilus, taking the name from Captain Nemo's submarine in the Jules Verne novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Oddly, instead of using a bottle of champagne to christen the Nautilus, they had to use a bucket of ice cubes because prohibition laws in the United States banned the use of any alcoholic beverages. Naval engineer Simon Lake equipped the Nautilus with some ingenious modifications for operations under the ice. To reduce the submarine's profile and height, he removed the conning tower and superstructure. He then enclosed the top of the submarine with a wooden superstructure 4 feet wide and 6 feet high. He then installed iron sledge runners on top of the wooden superstructure to protect it when the top of the submarine impacted the ice. The innovations didn't stop there. He also made a mechanical probe that would scrape the bottom of the ice sheet to measure any crevices under the ice. Another innovation was a telescoping escape tube, equipped with a saw that could cut through 13 feet of ice. The Nautilus and the Wilkins expedition departed on June 4, 1931, heading straight into one of the harshest environments on Earth. The first leg of the journey was from New York City to Plymouth, England, and then they would traverse the North Sea to Spitsbergen, Norway. The expedition planned a dramatic meeting with the German airship Graf Zeppelin at the North Pole. Unfortunately, the Nautilus ran into a strong storm crossing the Atlantic. Both engines had failed and the boat was left adrift. Wilkins had no choice but to radio an SOS. This eventually reached the USS Wyoming, which was crossing the Atlantic on a training cruise. The massive United States battleship took the Nautilus under tow to Queenstown, Ireland. It was later towed to Devonport, England, for repairs. This breakdown put the Nautilus even further behind, and many considered it too late in the year to start an Arctic expedition. Undeterred, the Nautilus and her crew set out on August 5th to the Norwegian coast. During this leg of the voyage, another storm hit the ship, damaging its bridge and giving it a dangerous list. The ship eventually reached Spitsbergen, Norway, on August 11th. From there, the expedition continued northward, carrying out scientific research despite being hampered by the dense ice pack. Now, it's important to keep in mind that these were very rough conditions. The boat had no heaters or insulation, so it was really unprepared to withstand the bitter cold. There was also, as many old submarines had, slow leaks in the hull, and eventually the freshwater system froze. Despite the problems and the bitter cold, the Nautilus reached 82 degrees north, the farthest north any ship had ever been at the time, and preparations were made to go beneath the ice. The crew of the Nautilus were sailing into the unknown, relying on technology that was as untested as the waters they were about to explore. On the edge of the ice pack, the crew discovered the controls of the submarine were not responding correctly. Having lost the stern dive plane some time earlier, the expedition was in jeopardy since the submarine could not control its depth without them. Now it's important to acknowledge a bit of controversy here. Some sources say that upon learning of the situation, Hearst threatened to pull financing if Wilkins did not try to punch through the ice. Others suggest that Hearst told Wilkins that the expedition was now unsafe and to return to the Arctic with a better boat. In the end, Wilkins gave the order to proceed. In an attempt to submerge the boat, he had the Nautilus purposely hit the ice floe and gave the order to trim the Nautilus down under the ice by using the rear dive planes. The daring maneuver succeeded, causing the Nautilus to submerge under the ice, making history as the first submarine to operate beneath the polar ice cap. The unusual diving technique did, however, seriously harm the upper works of the submarine. Days had passed since her last radio communication, and she was assumed lost. The Nautilus, however, was not, and continued submerged under the ice. After a few days, she was able to surface through a hole in the ice. Still, her radios had suffered damage that would take many days to fix. The scientific team took advantage of the situation and conducted valuable research on the polar ice. On September 20th, the Nautilus returned to Spitsbergen, all crew members alive, with valuable scientific data. Later, their research was published in the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution's inaugural edition. In the end, Hearst carried out his threat, refusing to finance the expedition because he saw it as a failure. After the expedition, the Nautilus was supposed to sail back to America via England. However, on its way back it ran into another storm that further damaged the hull, and experiencing engine failure, it was forced to make one last docking in Bergen, Norway. Unable to make the journey home, and with approval from the United States Shipping Board, the Nautilus was towed out of Bergen Harbor and sunk in a fjord on November 20th, 1931. The United States continued its attempt to reach the North Pole under the Arctic ice. It succeeded in 1958. The second Nautilus submarine, SSN 571, made the journey beneath the Arctic ice sheet. In 1959, the USS Skate became the second submarine to reach the North Pole and the first to surface. Her crew committed Wilkins' ashes to the North Pole in remembrance of Wilkins and the Nautilus's epic journey. Even though Wilkins and the Nautilus did not reach the North Pole, their crew did collect important scientific data. More importantly, they demonstrated the submarine's ability to function beneath the polar ice cap, setting the stage for future expeditions. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to leave a comment below and like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out.